So looking at, I suppose, iOS, which is the other big, like, huge platform, would you say, what would you say the stark differences between the two are, as like in terms of the systems design? Are there, or have we reached a point where things are, where things are kind of like crossing over, where there is almost no difference, maybe slight subtle things, like American English and British English, or is it actually much more detailed than that?
I want to say both. Like, both platforms, I guess, could be called expressions of the concept of a design system with different dialects,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. Like, I think that each platform has an equally nuanced expression of their system, but they just have different ideas about what the UI is made out of, how it should respond, how things should be structured, things like that.
Yeah, I always found, maybe this is just from the examples I've seen, but iOS seems to rely on gestures quite a lot with some powerful features, which, I've given talks about this, like there's features which no one's ever seen, but is that like, so we're just selecting text, if you hold down the space bar, the whole thing, the whole keyboard becomes a trackpad. And people are amazed when they see that for the first time. But I don't know if does Android really rely on that as much? I don't know. I mean, hidden UX always scares me because, especially if there's like core things which the user relies on to navigate something. But I don't know. But then pull to refresh has become quite natural and normal. I don't know. What do you think about that gesture navigation?
Yeah, I think that sort of thing exists in like an interesting conversation because on the one hand, yeah, like critical actions that are needed to successfully use an app can't be hidden. On the other hand, if there are hidden things like, as you said, people are blown away when they discover using the spacebar as a trackpad or whatever, because it's not a critical function, but it does generate some like excitement and positive sentiment for the platform when it is discovered. Then on a third hand, there's like you said, pull to refresh is something that I don't know if there's a real world analog to that kind of motion that would make it discoverable outside of its own context. So once people discover it, there's this thing that happens where the pattern becomes known by people who are using these devices.
Yeah.
And then it becomes something that exists everywhere. The danger in that, like going back to the other side, is that there are people who will start using these devices for the first time and haven't been part of this like long conversation of these patterns becoming, starting off as one thing and then becoming known and then becoming a standard. So like that will end up creating more considerations in the long run because these folks still have to like learn all of that history.
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose, and I mean, what kind of things in the real world do? I mean, imagine if you had your chest of drawers with your underwear in it. You can't pull it and then, oh, look, it's all clean now. It's very... Actually, well, then having said, like, jokes aside, maybe blinds is kind of like where it possibly comes from, like curtain blinds where you pull down and it opens. Perhaps is where the metaphor... I don't know. It'd be interesting where... Like, pinch to zoom seems like such a natural thing now, but then I'm biased with 10 plus years of being educated that this is the way you do things.
Right.
But it's just that natural thing of how do you design that? It's almost like, how do you design a letter? Not like as a typeface, but how do you actually design the concept of a letter?
Yeah.
That seems to be like that. I can imagine in that space when the designers were first coming up, these concepts, that must have been a very wild time. Like a moment in time where you don't even realize that you're actually doing something quite interesting.
Yeah. That kind of conversation is like the space where I think like this is why it's maybe this is a hot take, but maybe these spaces are where it's easy to see how appealing it is to believe that designing technology is a magical or somehow very special and unique thing. Even though like I'm of the opinion that it's not, I can see how you could see like pulling the blinds up and conceptually your perception of the space occupied by the window is completely different because now you see a three-dimensional world outside. Or
Yeah.
if you think like, I have a 4:6 photograph, like what would it be like if I could just tug on that and it gets way bigger, you know? And then you can translate that into a screen, and like that's pretty cool. That's pretty unique.
Yeah, no, it's pretty amazing. But the question is like, in the lab, it's like these eureka moments. But goes back to what you said is, you can have any kind of design system, and a lot of these things are opinionated. But does the person understand instinctively to do the thing that you wanted them to do? Is the question. And that, I suppose, is the journey every designer, UX designer, has to go on. Is we come up with all these views and opinions based on our baggage that we carry with us, but is it right? Is it correct? I mean, I've had some very sobering experiences when I take stuff into UX research, thinking, "Oh no, the thing which I believed for all this time is not true."
Yes.
But then that's always good. I actually find that fun because being proven wrong and hearing someone describe your design is always hilarious, I find.